Mumbai's matchbox houses to Delhi's balconies. We're bringing the oldest fight in India to you, Delhi versus Mumbai. I'm Anjali Thomas, a Mumbaiya at heart and the deputy editor of ground reports with ThePrint. And with me is my colleague Tina Das, a senior correspondent and Dil Se Dilli Wali. Welcome to this episode of the Mumbai-Delhi Express podcast, where we're going to discuss rent. Tina, I feel like I should just leave, just walk out and leave. Rent in Bombay versus rent in Delhi. I don't have a leg to stand on.
I mean, I do remember seeing a viral post where this very tiny semblance of a child's drawing kind of a room in Bombay, and somebody pointed out, but it's a chawl, and it was being
Yeah,
sold off. Sorry, it's being rented out for like 45,000 per month or something.
that's the one. Yeah, I was going to talk about that. So essentially, it's in the island city Matunga East. Matunga is not even Bandra. Okay? It's like Matunga, and that place, it's got one washing machine, a toilet, all cramped up, which is why people are saying that 45,000 is useless. Which is why people are saying that 45,000 is a ridiculous amount. And here's the funny thing: the landlord describes it as old world charm. I think in one of the posts that I saw, and people are just shocked. Yeah, it consists of a modest living room, and the bedroom just about can occupy a bed if you're lucky. There's also a small staircase leading to a loft, and that's for extra storage. Oh, yes, and the landlord put it as old vibe, 1 BHK on rent, only 45K. Only 45K. And that's the city I come from. The sad part is I've gotten used to Delhi. So now when I talk to my parents back home, I'll be like, yeah, I need a balcony.
Well, let's start actually with the fake advertising because I don't think it's restrictive only to Bombay. To be fair, this kind of advertising where they show a room, and of course, this is a more hilarious post. But in Delhi as well, scams abound all the time. So even if you see this very fancy looking house in photos, so what I have discovered in my house hunting here that there are certain locations which is affordable for, let's say, first time jobs and
Hmm.
students who would want to get their first flat, not live in a PG, and they would put these very nice flashy photos, newly built, and they are like these catchphrases. I don't know what the Bombay catchphrases are. The Delhi catchphrases would always be newly built,
Okay.
lift, near to metro, walking distance. So
Is it walking distance?
walking distance is always the biggest scam, which is what I learned, the first time I came to Delhi. There's this phrase that Delhi walas like to tell you when they give you directions,
Hmm.
when they're not completely clueless themselves.
Hmm.
So if you ask them, where is this? Suppose you've put the location on Google Map and you can see it somewhere nearby. So back then there were no Google Maps, right? We were not
Hmm.
using Google Maps in 2010 when I came for admission. So on my walking with my father in this like heat, summer
Hmm.
heat for admissions, and you're trying to locate a PG. So this man on the road, and we are like, this is City Fort or somewhere it was. I
Hmm.
said, Bhaiya, yeah, where is this?
Hmm.
And he said, Arey Bhaiya, bagal mein hai. So yeah, this is a unit of distance in Delhi, guys. This is a unit of distance in Delhi, where bagal mein could mean anything
Hmm.
from 200 meters to 2 kilometers. It depends on what that person thinks is nearby. It really has no standardization. So when it says walking distance, keep
Hmm.
in mind this. See, walking distance for me could be 10 kilometers. Maybe I
Hmm.
walk 10 kilometers every day. So they'll never ever go for this scam because they'll tell you all of this. And then the other scam is when you reach the place, forget about walking distance and ventilation and all. So there's no ventilation. When they said it's newly built, they forgot to mention that none of the windows can be really opened and operational. Because if you open, it'll bang in the head of the other house. So
Okay.
it's very well lit because all the lights are on. So that is how, there is a caviar is the word we use. So if you say, but how is it well lit? Because there's no natural light. He said, no, we said well lit. We didn't say well natural lit. It's only well lit. And you go, and what you'd find is they have taken, they have made use of technology, great phones and panoramic photos to create the idea and illusion that it's a much, much bigger room than it actually is. So I think we should focus on how online posting of real estate is such a wonderful scam, at least in Delhi. I don't know how
Hmm.
much of that exists in Bombay, but going by this post, clearly it exists there as
But
well.
here's the thing, this was not a scam. 45,000 rupees for a 1 BHK in Matunga East actually makes a lot of sense. We have been Stockholmed. A friend called me up this last week and said, I've got a great deal for Bandra. And I was like, great. It's a 2 BHK for 95,000. But it actually had a balcony, a proper balcony, not like those ledges that we call. And that's what we think is a great deal. An 800 square foot 2 BHK in Bandra for 90,000 rupees is great, which makes the city very difficult to live in for young working professionals. And which means that either you're 15 or 10 to a flat, or you're just like, trying, or you're, going deeper or further into the suburbs and then traveling. So I think Bombay, and you have a similar problem in London, you have a similar problem in New York, where the demand for flats and for affordable flats is so huge that you get one and it's grabbed, it's just taken immediately. So that's what I feel, that in Delhi you'll have it so much better. I mean, some beautiful flats for 45,000 rupees, for 35,000, for 20,000 sometimes. And especially the DDA flats, they've got balconies. Like I live in a DDA flat. There's a balcony, and I know I keep saying that, but in Bombay, the balcony would be a 1 BHK that would go for 25,000 rupees at least. So I think in terms of space, in terms of quality of life, in terms of everything, when it comes to rental, Delhi is better than Bombay. But another thing that I have a problem with is that there are societies that will not let you live if you eat meat. You know, illegally, like vegetarian only. There are families who will only rent, and that is very prevalent in Bombay. So I have friends who hide the fact that they are meat eaters. Even when they order, they're very careful about putting the food in, putting packages in the dustbin, because their neighbors will probably check their dustbin.
And here I thought it's only Delhi neighbors who are nosy. But to be fair, yeah, I think Delhi in that, I'm not saying there are never any incidents of discrimination, but I do think on an average, it's more possible for single people to find houses, single women to find houses. There are challenges, I'm
There's
not
no
disagreeing.
prejudice.
There are prejudices, but that depends on area wise.
In what way?
For example, I have been living by myself for now, what, good odd 5 years. So the first house I did encounter an issue, not actually from the landlord. It was actually from some neighbor of mine who went and complained to my landlord saying that, I don't know, I wasn't wearing a bra, I was wearing a certain kind of dress. I don't know, I'm not sure anymore. And I was so taken aback because I'd not faced it in so
Hmm.
long. And I'm too old to listen to all of this that I think I was so taken aback I didn't say anything
Hmm.
while she was going on. And I'm not saying the landlady was out and out, how can you wear something like this? All she said is, I also have a daughter. I know people say things like this. Just maybe put on a shrug and go or something. For me,
What?
it was even that was unacceptable. Of course, I later called her that, A, I'm not your style. I'm a
Hmm.
woman, I'm 30. And I will not take it even from my parents because, this is a very, very individualistic choice. And I said, Auntie, next time somebody has a problem, why don't you send them directly to talk to me?
Hmm.
Because I'll ask why you're staring at whether or not I'm wearing a bra. It's none of your business.
Hmm.
I'm not doing
Hmm.
it in your house. I'm clearly
Hmm.
doing it in my own space or on the road, and I'm comfortable with it. And it's a public road. You really can't do anything about it. But apart from that, I never really faced any issues.
Hmm.
Then I shifted to the other house. I told them, actually, my landlords used to live right above my house. And I was very straight to the point, and I asked, do you have restrictions? Please let me know beforehand. I can't come back home someday and have some argument over,
Hmm.
why is somebody over or why you're playing songs. I'm not like somebody who plays loud music and all. I get that. You live in a society, you can't be blasting. I think I anyway get annoyed, so I wouldn't be blasting loud music anyway at like ungodly hours. But they never had any problems. I lived there for like a good 1 year. They never really had any concerns about being a single woman living there.
This
There'll be
rem-
curiosity, yes, for sure.
all right.
But I have not really faced anything major that I would.
This actually reminds me, there was another post that went viral a few weeks ago, or maybe earlier this year, on this woman who says that she has to spend 50 to 70,000 for rent. She might as well. She regrets being independent. She says, I should just have good relations with my parents and move back.
True.
And in the comment section, people were like, come to Delhi, you'll get a place for 8,000 or 9,000 rupees. Again, with Bombay, it depends on which part of the city you're renting in. If you're renting in Bandra and Andheri, a lot of these places, they're used to single women working. They're used to unmarried couples living together, so there's not that much scrutiny. Having said that, my friend who spent 90,000 and thinks she's got a good deal in Bandra, and I think so too. She has a partner, a boyfriend, and they got the place because the landlord insisted on meeting the two of them and said he liked their vibe. And she is my age, she's in her 40s, and we have to get blessings of our landlords to live together. That was, and we were all just celebrating without realizing the irony of the situation. But I think Bombay, it depends on where you're looking. In some areas, women are scrutinized, or they will impose limits on guests you can, a number of men who can come to the house, etc., etc. But for the most part, in the last year or so, anecdotally, I find that it's becoming easier. But again, this is anecdotal. So,
But this is surprising because I would have always imagined, considering the safety parameters and considering the way women feel generally safe and all, and there are a lot
hmm,
of women. We have had previous
but
episodes talking about how women by themselves are not unsafe and wear whatever they want, or otherwise you would see as a very evolved modern space. When you have concerns by landlords being raised about being vegetarian or non-vegetarian or single and not single or living with,
hmm,
it sounds strange because let's say in Delhi you have a history of women generally being unsafe, and there are this other bigotry already in place. So I would say the flip side, I mean the opposite would actually make more
not
sense, I
really.
would
I
say.
think in Bombay we're conflating safety with middle class mentality. So again, it also depends on where and who your landlord is. I have an aunt who will never rent to young unmarried people of either men or women or trans or anyone, because she's just like, who knows what they'll do? They'll have parties, and that's her mentality. No one's going to say anything, and that's the way it is. So I think it just depends on which city, which part of the city you're
Or
living
that Delhi
in.
people love their money, so they don't really care. I mean, it could very well be that, or maybe it is more used to actually, um since Delhi is cheaper rent wise,
Hmm.
of course people, if you're working in a corporate and you are given a choice of which city to live
Hmm.
in, I think people often choose Delhi not because it's like a great city in terms of other things, but sometimes real estate becomes the only choice. And then you have space, and then you have
Hmm.
spaces like Noida, which is even cheaper than Delhi,
Hmm.
which is the suburb, right? Gurgaon is more expensive, of course. The tree, Gurgaon is the most expensive. But if you want a proper gated society kind of a
Hmm.
life, people now opt for Noida. And I have lived there for 2 months. I can tell you it becomes addictive, is the word I would use, because everything in place, right?
Okay.
You have a swimming pool in place, you
Hmm.
have lifts in
Mm,
place, even newly
yeah.
construction. You have, okay. So if you're saying Delhi has balconies, Noida has a balcony in every room, guys. In the kitchen as well, there's a balcony. In the living room, there's a balcony. There'll be a tiny balcony squeezed in for your room, which is like an extra spare room, let's say,
Hmm.
in the house. They'll try to squeeze in a balcony even there.
I think that's amazing. You know what happens in Bombay? If you have a balcony,
You
they
turn it
break
into a
it down
room.
and extend it to increase the size of your room because the house is so small. But you brought up an interesting point. You brought this gated community. Now, I haven't lived in Bombay for 10 years, but growing up at least, there was no concept of a gated community. Now it's aspirational. Now you have it, but they were just individual buildings, and that's it. So I remember reading a lovely piece, I think it was in the Times of India, where for senior citizens, actually the concept of a gated community where you have common areas like a gym, a swimming pool, a meeting room, a puja hall, or whatever it is really good for social interaction. It's good for community. In Delhi, you have a building. If you're lucky, your neighbors, you would have known your neighbors for generations the way we did. And people would sit together in the park, or the small park, Bombay Standard Park, outside the gate, and have a chat and go back. But for the most part, at least in the old parts of the city, the idea of gated community doesn't exist. What I also found quite fascinating here, and it's happening in Bombay now, are the walls, the gates, the locks, the guards. It's very difficult, especially in some of the newer places, for anyone to just enter it. In the old buildings in Bombay and also in Delhi, because I live in a DDA flat, it's easy. My vendor comes. He does. There's no QR code, OTP given to him. I can just look out and buy my sabzi, buy my fruits, buy whatever it is I want to buy, which was how it was in Bombay. What I'm seeing now is newer constructions coming up with higher walls. It's as if we want these people out, the people who we rely on out, and that seems to be a more Delhi thing than a Bombay thing.
I don't know. To be fair, where I grew up, it was a campus and we also had like big walls. So I think it's more a space thing. If you have space, I think if Bombay also already had space, they would erect walls. See, the class system
No, we do
situation.
have walls. The newer ones, they have the massive
So
walls.
I think Bombay never had the chance to exercise its class system with the
Hmm.
existence of these massive slums and, of course, space restrictions. I think Delhi did because it always had the space to do it, and I think we continue doing it wherever we can. I think it's a very independent of. I think it's something that if you are given a choice, people like to keep out sort of a thing. Because it happens in Noida. There are no vendors who come in, right? Like you have to get out of the gate. Like they'll be parked right outside of society. There'll be 5 gates, right? So there'll be like two designated gates right in front of which the vendors
Hmm,
will sit.
hmm, hmm, hmm.
So that's how it works. They won't come in.
Half. I was, yeah, used to them just coming in. Now, I went to one place, I think in Bangalore. You get you're given an OTP. There's an OTP that comes to the phone, even if you're a guest, and then you have to show the OTP to the guard, and then they let you in.
So coming back to discrimination, I think, however, one of the more consistent things, which unfortunately had emerged not just during COVID, but in a lot of ways that you mentioned, there were like during COVID, of course, I think it was a pan-India thing to be very suspicious if you're a doctor or a medical
Oh yeah, or a
worker.
journalist because we were out reporting.
Yeah. But racism is a pretty big issue in Delhi because the vegetarianism comes up in that. So the not renting out flat and the vegetarianism thing sort of get conflated together when it comes to a lot of people from Northeast. So they'll just look at you and assume you're going to eat dog meat, unfortunately. And I'm not saying it happens everywhere. So there are big pockets in Delhi where you would find most number of Northeasterners living, and they'll have Jat Punjabi
Yeah.
landlords, and they're completely okay with it. They don't care what you do, you don't care what they do. But and this is a wonderful film, by the way, guys. I'll recommend. I think that will give an insight of the plight of people who are from Northeast in Delhi and how they struggle with such spaces. It's called Akhone. It used to be on Netflix. I don't know where it can be found. I think just look it up. I think you should watch it because it is a dilemma about cooking a particular dish, which is Northeast now, and the smell that comes, and then it sets. It basically shows how racism exists. Like even when it's a area where a lot of people from Northeast maybe live, doesn't mean it's devoid of racism, doesn't mean you don't struggle while you're trying to get a house, because that's where these conversations crop up. So it's a wonderful movie, just putting it. But I faced it when I was looking for a house, and uh, I mean, half the time I'm told that okay, you don't look like you're from Northeast.
What is
People
that
often,
supposed to mean?
yeah, because I don't have Mongolite features. That's what it means. Of course, it's offensive, but of course, people here don't understand it is offensive. And I'm tall. I'm pretty tall. To be fair, I'm too tall for an Assamese. We don't really have like a lot of tall women. That is not untrue. But they look at my surname, but my Aadhaar would have my original address back home, or at least wherever. And then they're like, oh, you're from Northeast. Oh, and then I asked her what happened. Oh, there were just two girls who were living from some state from Northeast, and I think they cooked something which was smelling, and I had to ask them to leave. I'm not. So there's this constant racism that happens when, especially for Northeasterners, it does happen. But I think, thankfully, because we have Delhi University, so there's always a lot of influx of people from Northeast. That has also helped on occasion for people to acclimatize here to the idea that yes, people from Northeast will come and live, like in North Campus or even in South
Hmm.
Delhi. There are big pockets now where people live. But I think when you're a student, when they know you're vulnerable, I think that's when they are the rudest in that sense, or say that we'll not give you, or basically the equating immediately of non-veg with
Yeah, and I think you
and
brought up.
smelly food.
That's so sad because you brought up this point of the smell of food. For me, the more different kinds of smells you have just make the community, like the smell of dried fish, which a lot of people can't stand, is something I grew
But
up with,
that's also
having
Bombay
growing.
smell,
It's
interestingly,
it's the
right?
smell of Bombay, the smell of fresh fish cooking. So on Saturdays and Sundays, that would be the time when people would splurge and buy fish and cook for the family. And wherever you went, you'd get that smell of fish cooking. But the moment I moved to another society, which was in the suburbs, in Malad, I would think twice about cooking fish in the house, because neighbors would complain, and they wouldn't just say that. They'd be like, "Oh, what was that smell?" And I'd be like, "Fish frying fish," and then you start censoring the way you cook, because you just don't want to upset anyone. And that's so sad, because if I get an interesting smell from of food being cooked in my neighbor's place, I'll just knock on the door and, "What are you cooking? I want some." And because it's India, it's accepted, it's allowed to do that. Delhi unfortunately wins this round.
I like the fact, and I'm going to give it to Anjali that she was very gracious about this,
Well, I
mostly
really
because there
can't
are no arguments.
there are no.
But yeah, I think yes, I have always felt like I've been pretty fortunate considering I'm from Assam, and I've grown up in like really big spaces along with gardens. So I was to anyway over ambitious when I came to Delhi. I wanted a garden and a lot of tree sounds as well. So you can see the more you get, the more you want. But I guess a Bombay person would just be like, oh, there are two rooms and there's a
Wow,
balcony.
wow, that's my place. But I can't live in a big flat. I can't live in an independent house. If there's so much space, I'll just start panicking, because I'm so used to living in small
So
houses.
clearly, it is more about how little you get and what you get used to. But on that note, we are going to end the podcast today. But as always, please send in your recommendations if you have any, or any fun fights, mock fights that